The New York Times calls itself the paper of record, all the news that's fit to print. The best and the brightest walk its halls. Well, the editorial board just published an essay or an opinion entitled "This is why your energy bills are going up." So let's just see what the best and the brightest have to say about our energy bills. All right, well, here's the essay. This is why your energy bills are going up. Now, energy bills, I would say that means electricity, right? I mean, you don't get a bill for gasoline or something. It's electricity is what they mean. The editorial board is a group of opinion journalists whose views are informed by expertise, okay? Expertise, research. That's really the most important thing. Research, debate, and certain long-standing values. Though the New York Times doesn't say exactly who is on their editorial board. So if we want to debate with them, well, we can't because we don't know who they are. Well, the only person we really know who they are is Kathleen Kingsbury, and she was named the opinion editor. So she's essentially the last editor that this story would go through. So really, the buck or the word stops with her. So anyway, Kathleen Kingsbury, she's born in 1979, I believe, in Oregon, and then she moved to Boston for a while, which is where I'm at. So it'd be interesting. Anyway, we'll go through that pretty soon. You do not have to care about climate change to believe that clean energy is an important and strategic resource. I mean, okay. Solar and wind power are now cheaper than coal in many places and sometimes cheaper than oil and gas. Now, this is interesting. Now, yes, not in many places, in some places. Obviously, where there's a lot of wind and a lot of sunshine, you would expect that solar panels and wind turbines would do well, and they do well in places like California, well, in certain places of California and Arizona. Yes, they do better. But let's look at the first thing, which I find fascinating. So the first thing that she's going to compare solar and wind against is coal. But if you look at the history of coal, right, coal electricity generation, this is the latest data. So she was born in 1989. Is that what I said? 1979, around there. So she's born around here. So in her life, coal electricity generation from coal was going up. But when she left college, it started to go down. So electricity from coal generation has been going down for almost 20 years. 2007 was its peak, if you want to call it that. But you can see it's already flatlining here. So basically, it's been going down for almost 20 years. So to say that renewables are cheaper than coal, well, okay. I mean, that's, I don't understand. It's been going down. Why would you compare it to that? There are no coal plants being built in the United States. Like, nobody's talking about building more coal plants. So why are you talking about coal plants? I don't get it. And so I think to me, this is sort of like a political argument you're making against maybe Virginia or like the red states. Again, I just don't get why you would talk about coal when coal has been being phased out for the past 20 years in the United States. And okay, it says sometimes cheaper than oil and gas. Now, oil, there's very little electricity generated from oil either. So I don't understand why you would talk about oil. Most electricity is generated from gas. So I think everywhere in the country, it's at least 33%. So gas is anywhere from about 33% to 57% of electrical generation is natural gas. So really, it should be solar and wind power are now cheaper than gas in some locations, where there is wind or or sun. Though even in those places there are some issues. Okay, so again, I just don't understand why the New York Times did not research and look at coal and say coal is not relevant here whatsoever. Okay. And then it says clean energy sources help both hold down costs for American, which hasn't been proved at all, and prevent the United States from having to import so much foreign oil from countries hostile to our interests. What does she mean, hostile to our interests? In what way? I mean, everybody wants electricity. This isn't like a political issue. I mean, this isn't about democracy or autocracy or dictatorships or whatever, I don't know what she's talking about here. This is something that, in a junior high school journalism course, this whole paragraph would be thrown out. It's just horrible, horrible journalism. So anyway, I don't know what she's talking about here. But if you read the rest of the article, you can see this is a total hit piece on Trump and the Republicans. It has nothing to do with data. It has nothing to do with this is why your energy bills are going up. I mean, this opinion piece is saying they're going up because of Trump. But okay, well, what about Trump exactly? If you really look at the data, no, it has nothing to do with Trump or the Republicans. Anyway, so she goes into that. But let's look at, I'll tell you why it's going up. Let's look at natural gas electricity generation, right? So this is natural gas powers more and more of our generation. And natural gas is a limited resource. So, prices are going to go up. And it's just, and all the things needed to create infrastructure and this and that. So yeah, that's the key to it. Again, coal, nothing to do with it. And she should know better, being brought up in Oregon and living in Boston, where in the winter, when you need electricity, if you want to warm your home with electric heaters or do anything with electricity, run your ACs in the summer or whatever, you need it when you need it. You don't need it when the wind blows or the sun shines. You need it all the time. And this is an issue that many people have gone over who talk about this thing, and this is not mentioned whatsoever. It's just these blanket claims. They're unsubstantiated, that have not been proven out whatsoever. Yeah, clean energy sources. By the way, there's no such thing as a clean energy source because it takes a lot of fossil fuels to build wind turbines and solar panels. So China burns, now that's an interesting thing. Now coal is used a lot, but it's used in China. So China burns a lot of coal to manufacture the wind turbines and the solar panels that come to the United States or go all over the world. But people pretend like, oh, well, it didn't count that coal that was burned. But if you're talking about climate change, it doesn't make a difference whether the coal was burned in China, the United States, or anywhere. It goes into the same atmosphere we all share. So coal, a ton of coal has gone into building of solar panels, which require a lot of energy with their glass and whatever, and of course wind turbines. And so a lot of coal is burnt into these things, and you can't talk about clean energy without factoring those in. But the whole renewables industry and all the politicians, they want to hide that. They want to hide the amount of coal that goes into creating these renewable, whatevers, these new renewable systems. So she says these advantages, which she hasn't explained whatsoever, help explain why the right energy policy for the United States isn't all of the above strategy. What all of the above strategy? Is there any strategy here? There's no strategy. You made an unsupported claim that solar and wind are supposedly cheaper than everything else is really what you're trying to say. And if we just use more of it, then we'll be okay. So it says the country should continue using fossil fuels like natural gas. Yeah, again, most electricity is generated by natural gas. Okay, all right. So while shifting towards cleaner energy that does less damage to the planet. Now remember, 5 years ago, everybody was saying, "Oh, natural gas is a clean energy. It's 50% of coal or oil or whatever." Right? You don't hear that anymore, right? Because it's actually not that clean. Anyway. While shifting towards cleaner energy that does less damage to the planet. Again, unsubstantiated. The combination can help Americans struggling with slow-growing incomes while also addressing climate change. I want to point out again, the title of this story is "This is Why Your Energy Bills Are Going Up." Climate is important, but why do you keep bringing it up? It isn't what this essay is supposed to be about. And here we go, third paragraph. President Trump, however, has rejected the all of the above approach in his second term. He has, he is instead waging a war on solar and wind power. You've made an unsubstantiated claim that solar and wind power, are cheaper than fossil fuels, and they're not. I mean, they're only in these small certain places in the country with a lot of wind and a lot of solar. Perhaps they're less expensive. after you factor in the cost of making them in China with coal and the batteries and everything like that. But even for the sake of argument, and I'll say that, okay, yes, some renewables in California are cheaper than natural gas. But what about the rest of the country? Most of the country cannot power their heaters or ACs or whatever on solar and wind power. They just cannot. So to say that, is just wrong. So he says, rather than trying to put oil companies out of business, Mr. Trump is going after clean energy. Yeah, well, maybe he should. Right? I mean, that's the question. Again, I'm just going to keep saying the question is, why is your energy bills going up? Now, if you want clean energy and you don't mind if the bills go up, then fine. Then this is okay, right? Then this is not okay, right? You shouldn't go after clean energy because Americans accept that it's going to be higher bills. But she's saying the exact opposite here. Mr. Trump is going after clean energy, and Americans. Oh, it's interesting. She says she doesn't put President Trump. I'm sorry, it's President Trump. I hate the guy, but it's still President Trump. He's the president right now. And even when he's not, it's still accepted you'd still call him president. So anyway, this just shows you how what a political hatchet job this thing is. It has nothing to do with energy. Anyway, so Trump is going after clean energies, and Americans will face higher bills as a result, right? Wrong. They'd actually probably get lower bills if we didn't have clean energy. Well, again, she has to make a case for it. So then she goes into Trump signed a law in July that repealed the clean energy tax credits. Joe Biden. Anyway, just a hatchet job. And then she says his administration is trying to cancel wind projects off the coast of Massachusetts, Maryland, Rhode Island. Listen, those, the windmills need batteries for them to really work. Otherwise, New England depends on natural gas and nuclear. That's just the short of it. Here's a real howler to me. It says gas prices will also increase over the next decade, according to the Rhodium Group, a think tank, as consumers who would otherwise have driven electric cars continue using vehicles that burn fossil fuel. I guess, Trump is making is preventing people from switching to electric and burning fossil fuel cars. I mean, this thing is literally, I'm sorry to say, it's written out of her ass. I mean, she won a Pulitzer Prize. A Pulitzer Prize. And this is what she's writing. I mean, this is the Rhodium Group. Okay, let's get this over here. And what do? See, the first paragraph is climate change. They're not about energy. This isn't an energy consulting group. This is about climate. This is part of the whole renewables, ecosystem. It's the whole business of renewables. Look at this, climate debt, clean investment monitor. This consulting firm sells renewable data so renewables can basically get money. That's what they do. Now, again, the question is that money going to be more or less than before? If you say, look, why are your electricity bills going up? Well, is it because, why is it because? Anyway, I just want to show you that the New York Times pointed to this group. It's not really a pure energy consulting group. It's biased towards the climate. Okay, so back to New York Times. So a think tank. So again, this whole vehicles that burn fossil fuels, the reason that everybody can't drive an electric car is they're too expensive. It's typical New York Times, completely blind to the economic reality that any other normal person can see. And then she goes into Trump's tariffs and the Federal Reserve and stuff like that. Again, what does it have to do with energy prices? Here's another super juicy part. Mr. Biden's clean energy credits were meant to counter China's moves. He understood that wind and solar would play an important role in the economy of the future. If so, why did President Biden put 100% tariffs on EV cars from China? If you really cared about the climate and you wanted as much EV, you would want EVs from China. So he didn't. This is it. But, again, the New York Times, the Kathleen Kingsbury or whatever, she's just warping this, not pointing this out at all. I don't care what you think he did. He factually prevented EVs and renewable technology from coming into the United States by setting tariffs that made it virtually unaffordable. That's the truth. That's the truth. She says, Mr. Biden's approach is working creative incentives for private sector to build big clean energy projects, called EV battery production in Liberty, North, in the solar panels and whatever in Georgia. Listen, those are too expensive. Okay. Again, I'm not against them. I'm like, fine, if that's the way the country is going, but that will drive energy bills much higher. And you have to say that up front, that the climate is more important to you than the price of energy. That's fine. But make that argument. But again, she's not making that argument because she's made the false argument, in my opinion, at the top, that renewables are cheaper than gas. Then she, addresses that argument. The Trump administration argues that the wind and solar are not reliable, and that has some truth to it. Not some truth to it, okay? A lot of truth. Brother, anyway. If the wind is not blowing or the sun is not shining, power cannot be generated. But this objection is mostly a canard. Says who? Like, are you an expert in energy? Right? Have you done your research? What do you mean it's a canard? You're just using fancy words here. It's not a canard. It says advances in battery technology will allow the country to use wind and solar during off hours. Yes. Well, we already have batteries that can use it off hours. Like, the batteries are out there, but they're too expensive. Wind and solar power, they're way more expensive if you add them up and then you compare them against gas. Wind and solar also do not have to generate electricity at all times. We have the other forms of energy, nuclear, hydro, geothermal, and yes, fossil fuels. Well, yeah, but they're the primary forms of energy. Again, having energy that, you can have some energy when the wind blows or the sun shines, like, that's not the energy you want, right? You want energy when you want it. So, this is just, saying that this objection is a canard. It's not a canard. Like, again, the whole thing here is like, if you don't understand anything about energy, if you haven't done your research, you can read this and believe all this. Because again, it's the New York Times. It's a paper of record. You should trust us. All the news that's fit to print. We have research departments. We have hundreds of people doing research. We do not print, lies and falsehoods. This whole opinion piece is falsehoods. And any researcher that did the proper research would tell them that. And this is the last paragraph. The Republican Party has long denied the severe risks that climate change presents and stood in the way of sensible policies to address the extreme forms, flooding, heat, blah, 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 blah. They have become the party that stands in the way of lower energy prices for American households. False. False, false, false. Energy bills are not going up for political reasons. It doesn't make a difference whether it's Democrats or it's Republicans. You get some energy, you mine fossil fuels, or you build some renewables or whatever, and the cost is the cost, right? Why are they going up? It has nothing to do with politics. Now, if you want to do an editorial board, it should be called maybe why Trump is driving energy prices up. Fine, you can say that. You should say what the article is. But you're actually making a thing like, oh yeah, we're not going to talk politics. We're just going to talk about your energy bills are going up. And then we go straight into a political hatchet job. Nothing about the data about energy. Nothing. And just basically non-fact after non-fact, just, All right. Well, I think that's enough. So again, Kathleen Kingsbury, she's basically either dumb. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know. Just a political hatchet job person. I don't know what her deal is. She should know better. Coal electricity, again, going down for 20 years. It's not a subject. It shouldn't even appear in the article unless you're talking about China. And natural gas electricity generation, it keeps going up. If renewables were really lowering prices, wouldn't we see this going down as renewables took its place? Well, we're not, because they can't, because they're too expensive. If you really look at the data, if you really look at it honestly, renewables are not lowering energy bills. They simply are not. So to say that this is why your energy bills are going up because Trump is preventing renewables from lowering prices, that, to me, is actually, I'd call it a lie.